The overarching kind of role of the Pioneer is it's there to create colonies essentially. It's like a big flying fortress slash factory. With that kind of overarching archetype, should we say, it presented quite a few challenges both on the art front and the design front.
The purpose of the ship is to give players an entirely new gameplay element and to create a very unique experience for the players in terms of where they're going to settle, how that's going to affect the job market within the game, how that's going to affect exploration in general, which is now a lot more exciting than, oh, let's just fly to a planet and see what's there. Now you actually could do something on those planets, which is amazing.
Take loads of inspiration from real life. You have to, as the old saying goes, like everything in life is a remix. So you really kind of start with real world reference because it gives you the most tangible approach to start from. So in the case of the Pioneer, it was we were looking for more the actual function of it, a lot of kind of car production lines and really kind of manufacturing processing lines, and really kind of getting under the skin of how they work. You know, where do the products to manufacture arrive? How are they processed? How does that manufacturing take place? And then, you know, at the end result, you've got this essentially an outpost that's kind of ready to rock. So yeah, it's quite interesting and challenging, to be honest.
The key features is, of course, basically the whole outpost part of it. It's not, we didn't design the ship to be a ship per se. We designed it to be a floating factory in space. So everything in and around the ship is just geared towards production and building outposts and claiming your settlement.
My personal favourite thing about the Pioneer was essentially it created two subset of challenges. Number one, we've got this big floating factory. We didn't really want to make a pretty ship per se. It needed to feel kind of quite aggressive, weighty and heavy. So hence you got this kind of slab construction to it, which I think is really cool. But the most interesting thing for me was really kind of how it transforms when it basically lands on the planet.
When we decided to do this thing, nobody really knew what the best way of making it work was, because there's a lot of limitations you're walking up against. Like, if we are going to make this floating factory, the footprint of it is going to be massive, which means that the landing spots need to be massive. So we decided to have the ship just fold out, because that'll be, at least when it lands, it'll be massive, but when you're maneuvering it, it won't be as massive. Figuring out how the entire ship is going to fold out, and then how all the robot arms are going to disappear into the bodywork, how the production line slides in and folds around the magic box to conserve space, where all the materials go. It was a really unique and massive challenge. Daunting sometimes, but definitely fun.
We've got the technical challenges under the hood of like moving vis areas and moving interiors in the ship, which is incredibly challenging. So when we were designing the layout of that, we had to kind of keep all that to a minimum. So even though the whole ship moves, really what's going on under the hood, there's a lot of kind of, should we say, magic tricks to make it look far more alive than it needs to be, if that makes sense. So then when you've landed, you're in this kind of, it is a risky situation that you're in. Like this, number one, you're in a really kind of, should we say, a ship that's probably going to be worth an awful lot to people. You're going to be tanked up on minerals. You're going to be tanked up on everything you need to create what you're doing. And then also, of course, you've got the outposts that you put down, which need then to become another high risk, high reward factor in gameplay. So when myself and Dan were kind of like chatting about it, we were just saying, like, I kind of said, you know, it needs to feel fortified. It needs to be designed in a fashion that you can kind of defend what you're doing, not just from, should we say, air fire. Hence, you've got the upward facing turrets when you're down on the ground, but also from ambushes on foot. So if you study the layout of the ship when it's on the ground, it kind of feels a little bit like a prison yard. You've got these kind of outlook posts with visibility over the whole ship. The captain's bridge and where the architect is can overlook that whole process, and they still have 100% visibility over the landscape that they're planting on, right? So that was an incredibly challenging but really fun thing to work on. And it kind of, once you get those first ideas in, the rest kind of grows itself, right? So that's really kind of a sign of, I personally think it's a sign of really good game development. It's all very well sitting in a room and coming up with all these ideas and saying it's going to be X, Y, and Z. What generally happens in the most successful titles that you see is that they'll have an idea, something will come through, maybe unexpected, which is the case of the Pioneer, and you just build on those positives. And that was the case with the Pioneer. We had an idea, and it grew and grew and grew to what we have now that went out into the sale. And it's a really cool, and it's something that we've never done before. It's something I don't think anybody's done before. It's really a command and conquer flying factory, but in FPS, which is crazy, but it's awesome.
The creation of the outpost is actually quite simple. When we got to it, we basically decided that since this ship is going to land and give the player such a unique experience, we wanted to feel as kind of like a home base, like a command and conquer style base that lands where you plot down, and it has to be laborious. You can't just like land for a second and then just fly off and do your thing again. No, this is an intense process. It costs a lot of money, a lot of resources, and we geared everything towards that. So this ship is not super fast, it's not super agile, and it just does one thing, and that's production. So when it lands, as you guys have probably seen, it folds open, and the two manufacturing sites basically get exposed. It takes resources from the resource base all the way through those two manufacturing lines, kind of like how things get crafted in a car plant. And then it puts them in kind of a magic oven, because we obviously, showing outposts get made is not really efficient in terms of how the engine runs, etc., etc. So we feed the parts into kind of an oven or a construction module that then takes all those parts. So say on the right side of the plant, very clearly you can see a moving line where raw materials get crafted into a door, and that door moves then through a line of production robots that give it color, weld extra little details, extra little bolts on it, attachment points, holes, and then once that door is semi-complete, it moves into the oven, and then in the oven magic takes place, and out comes this outpost, and that then gets placed by autonomous arms in a spot that you designate, basically.
I'm really happy with the way it's turned out. I think I'm really excited to see it in the game. Basically, it's going to have quite a presence when it comes down, not just from a visual perspective, but also all the VFX that are going to kick off. And obviously the sound, you know, when you're doing this procedure, you need to be lit up like a Christmas tree, literally like seen from outer orbit, and then, okay, right, something's going on down there. So it's going to be interesting to see how the community use it.